about it because I figured out I'm getting ripped off. I
Well,
went to
you
the
are.
711. I'm not going to, because they're a big sponsor, I'm sure, of our show. But I went there and I filled the ice, and then I was like, iced coffee, and I realized, not that I'm that dumb, but I'm getting ripped off when I put the ice
Well,
in there. I'm getting less coffee.
They prey upon the people in a hurry. And
They're predators.
They are. Audrey loves cold coffee. Look, got a great show today. Franz Beard, Yancey Porter. Hopefully Rodney Orr can join us. His summer schedule is a little bit tight, but kind of the calm before we get really cranking up. So, Rodney, if you're love having you on here if you can join us. But lots to cover. Smash the subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner. Allow notifications on Android and iPhone because pen and paper are necessary because there's a lot to talk about coming right up.
Whoa! Get him!
Yes, sir.
Get him! Go get him, Sammy!
Get him, Mildred!
Get him, Mildred!
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, man. Where do we want to start? Yesterday, back and forth during the day, going back and forth from Laptop World. I'm watching ACC Network, and Franz, you were talking about this in the pre-show caboodle we have. But what's going on in the ACC? You better be paying attention, ladies and gentlemen. Jim Phillips, the commissioner over there, had some things to say about the schools that are just raising a lot of hell about the league that they're in. We don't normally see this kind of behavior. And the ACC media days, I was listening, to a lot of people's thoughts on it, Franz. My friend Chuck Oliver over in Atlanta, who shows on right after us, Southern Sports Today, love him. His quote was, they can do a lot better. They're in Charlotte, I think at the Hilton downtown, and there were a lot of people in the room, but it was a smaller room. They've got to expect more, but when you compare anything to SEC Media Days, Franz, it's not going to look as good, but I don't want to see the ACC go away, but Jim Phillips, just real quick, give me about a minute and a half on your takeaway from his comments to FSU and Clemson.
Well, it's been a double whammy for FSU and Clemson. First, last week came the news that basically the ACC is going to stay intact, largely because Clemson and FSU can leave, but nobody wants them. Nobody. The Big Ten doesn't want them because academically they are inferior institutions. The SEC doesn't want them because they don't expand the footprint. And that came out because already 3 presidents in the SEC, and it only takes a vote of 4 to keep them out. The fourth one will be there. But three SEC presidents said, we don't want them, period. We don't want them. And, they've made all this big show of we're going to leave, we're going to fight it and everything. Yesterday, little Jimmy Phillips, piling on top of what had happened at SEC Media Days when all this info comes out that the Big Ten doesn't want them, that the SEC doesn't want them. Little Jimmy Phillips comes up, the commissioner of the ACC, the almost competitive conference, and he said, guess what? We will fight you to the death. So they've got 12 years left on a contract on the grant of rights. He pointed out correctly. He said, you signed on to this not once, but twice, voluntarily.
Right. Okay. Now, great take on that. I listened also, Commissioner Jim Phillips of the ACC said corporate sponsorship is as good as it's ever been. Look, they've got some big TV markets, but here's what I use this term a lot, but to me it makes sense. Why would the SEC want Florida State? They've already got Florida. That's like bringing sand to the beach. Okay. Why would the SEC want Clemson? They've got South Carolina. Again, bringing sand to the beach. But John Hartwell, our good friend AD at ULM on the show, Kelly Leak is back. Love this guy. He's got the Bad News Bears picture. It's the elite employees working for a mediocre company, but the elite companies ain't hiring. Wow. Look, the ACC, John Hartwell said on the show a couple of weeks ago that there is chatter out there, and there's a lot of chatter, that Clemson and Florida State, the Big 12, might be reaching out to them. Now, you could say, well, they've already got Florida with UCF. No, they've got part of Orlando. That's what they've got. As far as Clemson, they don't have anything in South Carolina. So maybe the Big 12 comes after those two schools. But SEC Sidelines Sports Network and SECU, all these great shows on this network, we all know the tectonic plates, friends. What happens there reverberates nationwide. Yesterday they had Florida State, they had SMU, and they had Georgia Tech. And Georgia Tech is an example of what's wrong with the ACC. You look at the metro Atlanta area, between 6.5 and 7 million people. It's a city-state, okay? It's like Singapore. But you've got 22 counties spread out over that area. Georgia Tech they basically don't even make any effort to promote their football program. And they've got a proud tradition. You know that. But they got out of the SEC 60 years ago, and they've been paying a price ever since. Now, Bobby Ross had success. They had some success. Paul Johnson, they've had it. Chan Gailey was there. But, friends, you and I both know this. Unless you are all in, you're not in.
Well, it's true that, let's go first off. You mentioned FSU and Clemson to the Big 12.
Yeah.
The Big 12 contract is going to pay about $35 million a year. They're making $45 in the ACC. So are they going to take a $10 million pay cut to spite the ACC? Maybe they're not really smart to get out of the ACC to begin with. So if you're not smart, maybe you do dumb moves automatically. I mean, it's like Joe Biden gets out of the race and Kamala Harris becomes the next Democrat running mate. Sometimes dumb follows dumb a lot of times.
They do. Let me, don't mean to interrupt you, but when I raise my hand, because you're making so many great points, I want to get this one in. Again, John's saying not that it makes sense. I don't want John, John's a very smart man, but friends, Fox Sports and ESPN don't like each other. And what I think is happening is we're setting ourselves up. I think Apple is going to buy ESPN in the next year or two because everything we get is on this, okay? ESPN is down from 100 million subscribers to around 70 million now. On the flip side, there's those 28 or 30 million that are gone have ESPN Plus. It's how you get your information. But let's go back to Florida State. In 1992, when they turned down the SEC, Bobby Bowden said, there's more than one way to skin a cat. They had their chance. It was Auburn, Alabama. They wanted them in there. He didn't want to play them. And I remember people at the time saying the basketball money in the ACC is really, it's a better deal. BS, okay? The reality this past year, you know how much Texas, they're not back. They had a good year last year. But Texas football brought in $162 million. Do you know what the highest grossing revenue college basketball program in America brought in last year? $38 million. Okay? The ACC, if you think about it, prior to Danny Ford coming there, it was an afterthought. But then you had some great coaches like Bobby Ross, a proud VMI alumnus. Love that school. You had other coaches in the league, George Welsh at Virginia, but they didn't keep it up. Now they played around with basketball so much, they're trying to play catch up in football. I don't know if they can do it, friends.
Well, here's the thing that they've got is you look at the SEC. Let's just take that for an example. Florida seats 90,000. Okay, great stadium. Guess what? It's like the 7th largest stadium in the league.
Yeah.
You got Texas has 100,000. LSU has 100,000. Alabama has 100,000. Tennessee has 100,000. That's just right off the top of my head. Georgia's got 96, etc. Auburn at 87,000 capacity.
They went over 88 this year. They actually added some premium seats down on field level.
But still, it's the 8th largest stadium in the league.
Yeah, exactly.
And guess what? In the almost competitive conference, it would be the biggest stadium in the league.
Yeah.
Now, some people, here's the thing that you got to understand. Stadium size, bigger is, the old saying, bigger is better. Well, guess what? Well, I forgot Texas A&M has 100,000 too.
That's right.
The little brother, forgot about little brother there, tagging along with big brother.
They got 107, by the way.
So here's the thing. You've got all these big stadiums. What does that tell you? That tells you the interest is there. That tells you that the fan base will get there. We look in this league. You take away Vanderbilt, and goodness, God love them, but everybody's got to have a homecoming opponent. I mean, thank God for Vandy for that reason. You can go there and tailgate and have some Chardonnay and some grapes, okay. And if somebody remember to bring the brie next time, okay.
Give me a victory, give me a win, give me some boiled peanuts and a cold beer. That's the SEC.
The SEC, you're right. The SEC is boiled peanuts. Dried, the dried peanuts, you get them on the shell and they've been hot dried and everything like that. Hot dog, hot dog, with skinny weenie. You pay $6 for a skinny weenie that,
Well, and that's it. It's a cultural thing. Hey, look, I'll tell you, and I agree with what Perry Mason, our astute counsel, says. Great citrus farmer from down there in Central Florida. ESPN has, when you watch TV today, when you watch sports, you watch a sitcom on TV, you pretty much feel like you're being lectured, okay? I want to be entertained. Shut up and dribble, okay? And that's what ESPN has done. They've driven a lot of their people away, okay? Look, it's okay I like to know where you stand. That's fine. But you got to be careful with that because people, look, friends, Brendan, remember the great band Nirvana, Kurt Cobain? One of their greatest songs ever. Here we are, entertain us. That's what we want. And, I'm looking at the SEC at media days. Brendan and I, we were out there. There's not enough time in the day to see all the people you want to see and hear all the stuff you want to hear. We were running around, but it is so much fun. But there's so much passion. And as many people as were there in Dallas, over 1,200 credentialed media people, I could write a book on the number of people I know that weren't there. They sent other people there or they pooled it, whatever. And exactly, just they had things going on, or they didn't want to go to. By the way, Dallas is one of the most accessible cities by rail, by Greyhound bus. Might get there on time with the bus nowadays. Flying sucks, and airplanes. But friends, Brendan and I saw firsthand all this stuff, NIL and the portal. It just it's like an option drifting toward expiration date. it just disappears in value. It diminishes. Everybody's talking about the games right now and the rosters. By the way, went to Barnes & Noble, got my copy of Phil Steele's Football Annual. You'll need a magnifying glass to read it, friends.
Oh, heavens, yeah. I mean, goodness. I mean, this guy, he's got it in there. The left guard at SMU last year missed 3 ball games because he got a deer tick on his balls. I mean, okay, goodness. I mean, like I really want to know about that. Okay, you make a good point about ESPN. I had a friend of mine who he's the least sexist person in the world, but he said this: ESPN needs a channel called ESPNW. Put the women's sports on ESPNW. If it's a big game, move it over to the other networks, etc., like this. But have ESPNW so that if you really want to go hear people rail about why the women we should get equal pay and all this other stuff, let them go over to ESPNW and hear it. It's kind of like, at 11 o'clock in the morning, if you really want something woke, you go over and you watch The View. If you don't,
are they still living?
Loopy Goldberg is just as idiotic as ever,
Yeah.
And of course, Joy Behar talking about how she's about to pee in her pants. Well, she probably does. She's wearing Depends anyway. So
friends, you're making sense though. Let the free market run things. Like I love ESPN to watch the games, and I can remember when it started in 1979. You had the Valvoline, ESPN college football. You'd have Bud Wilkinson, Paul McGuire. You talk about Bud Wilkinson was so cool. He was Marcus Welby on TV. And you just trusted every word that he said. And you look at it, but we need ESPN. We need Fox Sports. We need competition. But I believe what people get caught up in all of the distractions that keep us from being focused on what's important. And that's the damn scores of the games. And that's all we really care about. And I tell you, I talked to some student athletes in Dallas, off the record and on the record, about NIL. And I'm not going to name them, but every one of them said, man, this is what they said. They said, it is not like you think. They said, we ain't going around talking about it in the locker room. And I said, in the private business world, none of my friends and I, we don't talk about how much money we make. Nobody does. And he said, this was a kid that played for an SEC school, obviously. Several of them, they said, no, sir. They said, we don't. There are very few people getting these big checks. It's quit worrying about this. It ain't the doing in life that's so bad. It's the dreading. Why do you think farmers get up at 4:30 or 5 in the morning to go to work? They get shit done. They want to be focused. That's why the best people in the world are up early in the morning. We're going to get through this, friends. Brendan, y'all know this. It's going to be fine. It's going to be better than ever.
Well, here's the thing that, you make a point about the market, and the market will take care of things. The greatest thing that has happened, I'll give you a good example. If you want, if you want to watch people giggle, you watch Game Day, because Desmond Howard will set the tone, and then they bring in Pat McAfee so he can wear his muscle shirts and try to look cool, which he isn't, and so forth like this. But they'll sit there on that set and they'll giggle away. You want football, you go over and you watch Fox. You get Urban Meyer. I'll tell you right now, Urban Meyer will give you, if you watch him for 13 consecutive Saturdays during the season, at the end of that, you will know some football. You will know some real football.
You will.
If you watch ESPN for 13 consecutive Saturdays, you'll know that Desmond Howard leads the league in giggles.
Well, Pat McAfee, I talked to the younger generation. You know, we had Will Hearn on yesterday, Bulldog Illustrated up at Georgia, rising sophomore. Oakley McFerrin, our intern, was out there with us in Dallas. McAfee's on there to appeal to them. Nick Saban, now he's going to be on ESPN Game Day. Desmond Howard is going to be an afterthought because when Coach Saban is talking and he's very measured in his words, people are listening and he has impact. You know, words are like bullets. You can't take them back. And I look at ESPN, show me the games and just comment on the games. That's what but you know what? We're going to have a guest on the show Friday, Chris Plank, sideline reporter for the Oklahoma Boomer Sooner Football Network. This guy gets it. I mean, Oklahoma compared to Texas, they are so excited and gracious to be in the SEC. Look, Brent Venables, his presence when you're around that guy, and we saw him at media days with his cowboy hat on and his boots. I watched SEC Network last night. It's kind of weird, Brendan. I don't know if y'all saw it. It was a combination, an hour-long show of Oklahoma and Texas going through spring practice, their spring games and all. But you're just they're becoming more real, of what they're like. But they're so glad. They kept saying, we're coming to the SEC. And it will take them a little time to adjust just to the different venues they play at. But I think it's going to be a lot of the Texas fans. If you think like a lot of people give Alabama fans a hard time. Well, my God, if you win like Alabama has won, you're gonna be a little crazy. I mean, how can you not when you got those kinds of championships? But
if you win
Texas
like
fans,
Oklahoma has won,
I know. No, I agree with you. And Texas has not. Texas, is that and Ken Capps, our friend, was out there with us. Football Writers Association of America. He's a Texas grad from Austin, lives in Dallas. But he said something on the show. He said, Texas fans are going to have to learn how to get up for night football. Not just at Darrell K. Royal Memorial Stadium, but on the road as well, friends. And Brendan, y'all know that. Listen, Saturday night in the swamp is a sausage grinder. I mean, there's a lot of dreams. Lester Miles, the former PhD at LSU football coach, used to say Tiger Stadium is where dreams go to die. Well, you can say the same thing and more about the swamp. What is Florida's record at night? I mean, they're like them and Auburn are in a 3-year cycle. It's a mess. They will pull out of it. But they just got to get ready. A night football game in Lawrence, Kansas is not the same as a night football game in Gainesville, or Knoxville.
Well, the thing about it, I remember when the SEC came out with that slogan, it just means more.
It does.
Well, guess what? It does. You take LSU. I'll use LSU for an example.
Yeah.
The people arrive for a big ball game on Wednesday. Brendan and I remember we were out there in 2009. And where they had the media park, I mean, we needed a Sherpa and camels to get us there. I mean, it was that far out. But along the way, how many times did people just grab us and say, "We've been here since Wednesday. Come on, we're eating."
Yeah.
I mean, this is just trying to get to the stadium. We bet we probably had a dozen invitations to eat.
You're right.
But they come on Wednesday, they start drinking. By Thursday, they're kind of semi-lit.
Yeah.
By Friday, they are full lit, and then they use the idea from about midnight Friday to about noon on Saturday to kind of just sober up and re-gear so they can start drinking again.
Yep.
And it's by the time you get to a game, We've been there. Brendan and I have been there at Tiger Stadium when you literally driving in, you literally feared for your life.
No, you were scared. No, it was scary. It's scary driving up there. I was scary when you drive up the little road by the. Well, I think the road where we parked was actually in New Orleans, so we had to walk about a day to get from media parking. So then I could come up to the broom closet in the stadium, which is the smallest room in the SEC to actually get that. I kid you not. There's a couple mops, and then there's a couple of places to plug in for your laptops, and that is it. In Baton Rouge. Oh yeah, in Baton Rouge. But you have to park. You have to park on Bourbon Street and then walk up to Baton Rouge. That's how
I know a lot of LSU fans. I've got a lot of them. I mean, and friends, and Baton Rouge is one of the great road trips you can take. I mean, I'm going to have fun going anywhere because I know that those fans are just as proud of their school as I am of mine. And when people say LSU fans are crazy, I'm like, well, that's your opinion. I mean, but it gets rowdy, and it can be when they start rocking the bus. You know, you got to prepare your team for that before they go. If your coach hasn't been there, then yeah, you can get caught off guard. All right. We're going to play some rapid fire stuff here before Yancey joins us. Do you all think that people in the media are missing the boat when they talk about Florida? And I put this out on Twix last night. That's what I call Twitter and X. You've got logo fever. Look at Florida's schedule. No one, damn near no one out there is talking about what I keep trying to tell people. Florida's roster is 63% 4 and 5 stars, which ranks 9th on the blue chip index. That's got to mean something. And the third year of being in a system with turnover as it is every year, I think people are, and I'm not, again, I don't say things just to please people. I really don't. I'm not going to. They're discounting Florida's roster.
Well, they certainly are. I mean, let me give you an example. You know, Florida's weakness on the offensive line last year was at tackle. Well, this year, guess what? They got 55 starts at tackle. Okay?
Yeah.
That's an improvement. You go down to quarterback. You got Graham Mertz, 43 starts. That is more starts than they're all but one quarterback in college football. Now, Everybody talks about DJ Lagway, but they also have Clay Millen, who came in from Colorado State. He's got 11 starts. You got 54 starts at quarterback. You know, you go to running back, you got 45 starts at running back between Montrell Johnson and Cam Carroll. And, you know, tight ends, 26, 28, 37 starts at tight end. Wide receivers, you got Shamir DK, 31 starts. Elijah Badger, 23 starts. Eugene Wilson, 7 starts. Khalil Jackson, 9 starts. On and on and on like this. Florida, people are missing the boat. Florida has experience. What did they not have last year? Experience.
Yeah. And you can't, there's an index that you look at. And that's the number of players that have started 10 games, 20 games, 30 games, or played significant minutes in those games. When you start breaking down, everybody talks about the schedule. They are looking at the name, the logo. That's hence the term logo fever. That's where people are missing the boat. And they like to compare Florida's schedule and Missouri's and say, well, if Florida had Missouri's schedule, they'd have a better record. Well, they hadn't played any games yet, number one. Number two, people don't give Missouri respect because they're out there on the Western Front. I think Missouri's going to be pretty damn good. Eli Drinkwitz at Media Days kept referring to the death row. That's what they call their defense, Missouri's death row defense. They lost their coordinator, was hired away by LSU. That's going to hurt them. But
7 players to the NFL.
Yeah, they had 5 players drafted off the defense at Missouri.
Yeah.
That's
great point.
And hey, what do you think about Brady Cook as a quarterback? And I'll tell you, by the way, I talked to Talon Green. At the blue chip index, do I overvalue it? No. But what I'm going to say is you better factor in the portal with that blue chip index. And that's where you got to be bringing in people. But thinking about Missouri, Brady Cook, Luther Burden III, they lose Cody Schrader at running back, but they brought in a couple of group of 5 running backs, one of them from Georgia State, some pretty damn good talent in the backfield. But I like Brady Cook as a quarterback. But talking to Graham Mertz and getting to be around him and just watch him, just the way he acts, a mature guy. I think this is his 6th year. Is that correct? Of college football?
Yeah, it is. It is.
Okay.
There's
something to be said about that. And you know I'm right.
I would dare say there is not a quarterback in the Southeastern Conference within 20 points of his IQ. You know, and that may be conservative in saying that. He is absolutely brilliant when it comes to understanding this. I have this on good authority from one of the best friends of the Mannings. Peyton Manning made the comment that Graham Mertz was the most impressive quarterback they've had there in years, not just based on his ability to conceptualize something. You say it, he can conceptualize it, put it into action, and he can make every single throw. And that came from Peyton Manning, who was there, and they said the most impressive quarterback they've had there in years. Meanwhile,
wow.
Let me tell you a story about our good buddy Carson Beck. Carson Beck's people called and said, "Well, where do we fly in the jet? You know, where's the private network to fly in the jet? What's the 5-star hotel near Thibodeau? You know, they hold the Manning Passing Academy at Nicholls State University." And they said, there are no 5-star hotels in Thibodeau. And by the way, all the quarterbacks who come here, you bring your own pillows, you bring your own sheets, you stay in a dormitory, and you go in there and you take a shower with 20 other guys. And here he comes up there. He shows up wearing a watch, as I'm told that is probably worth a couple $100,000 with all the diamonds on it and everything like this. And meanwhile, here comes Graham Mertz and some of these other guys, and they show up, you know, like Jackson Dart. They just show up and they are there to work. And they're not out there to impress anybody.
Yeah. Well, he needs to, you better learn, you show up, how you fight is how you live. Rumble Boxing, thanks to our sponsors like them. Coolmore Logistics and Transportation, folks. We're going to be joined in just a moment by Yancey Porter of the Rebel Yell Hotline. Catch it Monday nights at 6 p.m. Central, Sports 56 WHBQ Memphis, and all over on Super Talk Mississippi. Coolmore Logistics, if you had to ship anything less than truckload, full containers, vans, steel, lumber, cotton, seed, bricks, anything that you need shipped from Miami to Seattle and everywhere in between, give them a call. Check out that QR code on the screen. Memphis-based with a global reach. Nobody is going to outwork these guys when it comes to shipping, logistics, and transportation. Also say Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee. Was out there last week. I'll be out there again this week. Love going into that place. HewlettandDunn.com. We're trying to find these SEC shirts. They've got 2 for Ole Miss. One of them's the Mississippi logo in red and blue and white all over it. And then they got the Grove. They've got one for the Chop guy for the Gators. I've never seen a shirt like this. They've got it. They can't keep it in stock at HewlettandDunn.com. Call them and ask about it. And all of our great sponsors. And again, Web-Footed Kennels in Jonesboro, Arkansas. Chris Aiken, known him 30 years. Nobody does a better job of training your dog, working with your dog one-on-one. He's got 10 people helping him. The kennels are immaculate. The grounds are superb in Jonesboro, Arkansas. And, hey, think about it. How you fight is how you live. Well, get your body in shape. The Vitamin Shop in Olive Branch and Oxford, Mississippi. They are open Monday through Saturday, 9:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sundays, 10:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. Whoops, got mosquitoes coming in here. Anyway, thanks to all of our sponsors, Gaddis Home Innovation. You can find them all at sidelines.live. Yancey, had a great time being on your show last night. I was hiking on the St. Francis River, a little afternoon exercise before the storms came in. Love the energy on that show.
Well, at least y'all got some rain up there. Oxford's still bone dry. We got a little bit last week, but that's okay.
Hey, the forecast calls for rain up here 10 in Memphis, 10 days in a row. I mean, I'm working on the arc after the show.
Well, hopefully Sardis doesn't push it up north of us like it usually does, but hopefully we'll get a little bit down here.
Yeah. Hey, media days were awesome. Franz Beard and I have been talking about what's going on this week at ACC Media Days, but SEC Media Days, Greg Sankey's focused on his 16, but we learned a lot. I think really more than anything, you're just around these coaches, you're around these players, and what like I said last night, the energy, the passion, it just means more is an understatement about the passion and the love SEC fans have for their schools and this football season.
Yeah, it's going to be a exciting season. There's so many good teams this year. It's not one Alabama, Georgia. You know, you got 4 or 5 teams that are talked about as having a great opportunity to not only win the SEC but win the national championship.
Yeah. You know, Franz was just talking about the Manning passing camp, how, you know, Carson Beck was supposedly they asked, you know, where's the 5-star hotel? That is, you know, that's roughing it, man. Take your bedroll and a pillow, and you're going down there to Thibodaux. I mean, Thibodaux, Louisiana, folks. I don't think there's a Grand Hyatt or an Omni 5-star there. But what have you heard about Jackson Dart's performance at the Manning camp? Because I got to talk to him and just be around him at media days, and the guy gets it. And I give you credit because a couple of years ago, you saw him before everybody else did, and you said, hey, he's more of a gunslinger, more of what Lane Kiffin likes, and you've been right all along.
Well, I haven't heard anything specifically at the Manning Academy. That was some fascinating information that I just heard there about Carson Beck and kind of being a prima donna over there. But I do know that Dart has really upped his game, and I think a lot of that has to do with that he's finally healthy. I mean, he hasn't been healthy in 2 years. He's had a back, he's had a knee, he's had a shoulder. He's just constantly hurt, and he got his knee cleaned up, I believe, in mid January, and sat out for about 3 months. And I think that time, that 12 weeks away, just getting his knee right, getting everything back right. He's finally healthy. He's took out his wide receivers to California. They went out there for a couple weeks this summer. They do that every summer out there in LA. And I just think that he's healthy. He knows this is his 3rd year in the system. Um, you know, Lane hadn't had a quarterback for 3 years. Corral was there for 2. This would be his 3rd year there, Dart's 3rd year, and just that extra knowledge, being healthy, having receivers that he's been throwing to the last couple years.
Yeah.
There's high expectations for that passing game.
Friends, jump in here. Yancey Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline, folks, Monday night, 6 p.m. Listen and learn.
Well, I agree about Jackson Dart. And the fact is, you've got Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin is a brilliant offensive mind. I mean, I don't, he may have the best offensive mind of anybody in the country. Maybe the best we've seen in a long time. You look at what he did to revolutionize the Alabama offense.
Yeah, correct.
Everybody said for years, what would ever happen if Lane got a defense? Well, what did he do? He went out in the portal, and he got a defense. And now he's got a coordinator with a chip on his shoulder because he got run out of Alabama, who has players. Ole Miss is going to be scary this year. Trust me, folks. Ole Miss will be scary.
Yeah. Yancey, to add a little fuel to what he just said, Pete Golding seems really happy, and he goes and gets two of the top three defensive tackles available in the portal, including former number one or two player in the country, Walter Nolan. Again, you look at LSU right now, they might have 6 or 7 defensive linemen, and we use this term, it's nomenclature, it's not shop talk, but it's defensive linemen their coaches can trust. Even though Bo Davis is there, Kevin Peoples is there, they got the coordinator Baker from Missouri, that's not enough. Rebels have 12. This is a line of scrimmage league. Let's play a little question and answer. What cost Ole Miss in their 2 losses last year at Alabama and at Georgia, other than line of scrimmage? Anything?
Well, Alabama was it was an interesting game.
It
They
was.
just couldn't get going offensively. They played well defensively for the most part, and then Georgia just flipped them on both sides of the line. They got up, I believe, 14-0 real quick, 14-3, I believe, and just got steamrolled. After that, we've talked about it at length, but they had both their offensive tackles out for that game, and then they kind of switched everybody around. They moved the center to guard to tackle. They moved everybody around, and they haven't had any shuffling on their offensive line before that Georgia game. They started the same 5 guys the whole season and basically played them the whole game the whole season. And I think that taught Lane a lot there that, he's going to have to get some other linemen ready. He's going to have to get more depth. And so that's what he did. He went and got 4 really, really good Portal offensive linemen. They brought back 4 of their 5 starters and, brought back 2 or 3 of their key subs. They got 11 guys on that offensive line. They feel like that they can play with. So they're very deep on the O line and the D line. My question, if there's anything question mark to me, still they got 2 new corners. They picked up one from Alabama, Amos. They picked up one from Houston that was graded the second highest corner in college football last year, and then they got a guy that transferred in from Miami that started coming on at the end of last season. So we'll see on paper. That seems to be the biggest question mark there at cornerback. They feel like they got some good candidates, but if those corners can hold their own and play up to SEC ball, then they're going to be really good everywhere on the field in that season.
Yancey, I
Friends, I
think they,
picked
where
my
they
top.
really they really succeeded was the over the top, just like Florida did. They brought in the safeties because you got that no man's land between the corners and the safeties, and that's where people have been killing Ole Miss and where people have been killing Florida. Now you got safeties that can make those
Mhm.
tackles and make those hits.
Yeah, that's a good point, Franz. I thought last
Excellent.
year one of the weaknesses to me is their defensive backfield, and especially the safeties, as you referred to, really weren't that good in space. They were a little bit stiff hipped. They were good tacklers, good physical players, but they really weren't all that good in space. I feel like that they've improved that this season. They got some guys in the system that are a little bit more loose hip, got some more experienced players, and that's something to look out for too. But I think athletically, they're definitely better there at the safety spots.
All right. You talk about. Here's a question. I'm gonna throw it at either one of y'all wants to answer it. Well, the secondary is not good. Well, without a good pass rush, how are you going to have a good secondary? Would y'all agree with that? I'm going somewhere with this.
Sure,
Oh,
sure.
oh,
I don't
oh yeah.
think defensive line was really a key issue for Ole Miss last year.
Yeah.
They got ran on against Georgia, and they did get bigger and longer. And that's what Lane said. What did that Georgia game teach you? Is that we got to get bigger up front, and we got to get
Yeah.
longer. And so they did that. They picked up some guys. They got longer. They picked up 3 or 4 portal guys. They brought back all their key defensive linemen. But Lane has always valued that defensive line. He's always tried to have that the deepest position on the field for Ole Miss. So yes, I mean that is going to be something that's looked at. But I feel like the defensive line will be a championship caliber line.
Yeah. Friends, you talk about defensive line. At Alabama, you had guys like Quinnen Williams who might have a good year of 10 or 11 games, and they're number 3 pick in the draft. You develop that kind of depth. Guys realize I may not play that much, but when I play, it could be enough to get me in the first round. You can win a lot of championships, can't you?
Well, Nick Saban's mantra was always linemen on the defensive line, 20 snaps, 20 to 25 snaps a game maximum. Okay. You're playing in a game that's got what? The average team maybe 65 snaps.
65, 70, yeah.
Yeah. So you're rotating your linemen in there. There's 65 snaps, and you're rotating your linemen, and they're only going to get 20 to 25 snaps. But to do that, you've got to replace quality with quality, and that's where Alabama's been able to do it. And it makes that big stud guy, all that much better because he's only playing 20 to 25 snaps, but there's not a significant drop off when they bring in the guy that's rotating in. This is where Lane has really worked it out well. You look at what he did on the O-line. Yancey just pointed it out. He brought in 2 guys who started at Washington.
Yeah.
And neither one of them may start for Ole Miss. That's how good Ole Miss is.
That Yancey, that right there, 2 guys off the Joe Moore award-winning offensive line from Washington. Fran's saying they may not even be good enough to start at Ole Miss. When you start having storylines like that, you're in contention. I've got my top 4 in the SEC based on everything I know. It's Georgia, Ole Miss, Alabama, and Missouri. Where, if you want to, let's be, doomsdayer, that guy that wakes up in the morning waiting for the other shoe to drop. He lamented the death of the candle when the light bulb was invented. Poke holes in this Ole Miss team. Be negative, be scared, be afraid to embrace success and look at it as a burden like a lot of fans do because it's getting hard to poke holes in this Ole Miss team.
Well, the first offensively, the only hole that I can really see is you lose Quinshon Judkins, who's arguably one of the top 2 or 3 tailbacks in the country.
He is. Yeah.
And then defensively, again, you got 2 new corners, you got a new safety, and they're not proven yet. Not in this system, not in the SEC. So that's the holes to me.
Yeah.
Yancey, don't you think though that running back by committee, you lose Quinton Judkins and it's kind of like Florida losing Trevor Etienne. Everybody talking about, wow, you lost Etienne. Yeah, but look who you got coming in behind him here. Trayon Webb and this freshman Jaden Ball that everybody's going to be shooting themselves in the head that they didn't go after. He was 6'2", 237 pounds. And he is an absolute wrecking ball, But Ole Miss has got, Henry Parrish coming in there, Bentley coming in there,
Logan Diggs.
You got, I don't know. You may not have the one stud, but I don't know that you have the significant drop off there.
Yeah, they're gonna go back to that 3-headed monster that they did the first couple years under Lane, before Quinshon arrived at Ole Miss, and that's really the kind of the thought, like you said. But we'll see how it goes. Do I think they're still gonna be very productive? Yes. Look, Lane is the offense is predicated on running the football. Everybody thinks Lane Kiffin. They think about throwing it all over the field, but the fact is Lane led the country in rushing one year. I think he was second in the country one year. and he's been in the top 2 or 3 in rushing all 4 years he's been at Ole Miss. So running the football makes that offense go.
All right. We also left off UB40, my man, Ulysses Bentley the fourth. And I definitely think this running back, what we're going back to is 1970s football. Running back by committee with a wishbone. Guys, you'd have a bunch of guys with between, 400 and 700 yards on the roster. But that's okay. And the NFL has already fired the shot over the bow. The last running back I can remember that was taken, BJ, let's see, I'd say Robinson last year at Texas went number 9 at running back. But we all remember when Trent Richardson out of Escambia County High School there in Pensacola went number 4 in the draft, April of 2012. And unfortunately, he's remembered more for the Netflix series about all the people or whatever that series was, about all the family members that were just taking his money. But it's running back by committee, Yancey and friends. The body, they're saying these guys are coming in, they can't last 3 or 4 years. I mean, look at Zeke Elliott with the Cowboys. I mean, he's been done. He just doesn't know it yet. So I think this running back by committee, it's going to be a long time before anyone breaks any rushing records at any school, because the odds of a guy staying 4 years at the same school at running back and getting enough carries, we're in a different world right now. Yancey, so you look at the schedule, and this is a concern of mine just as a coach. Damn it, look at that schedule for Ole Miss. I mean, the first part of it, you've got Furman, Middle Tennessee, at Wake Forest, Georgia Southern, and then you've got Kentucky. And I mean,
It's almost like
I would
2
be
years
worried.
ago, right? It's the same kind of schedule as it was 2 years ago when they started off.
Yeah, the back end loaded schedule per
Back
se.
end, yes.
And then here's my question, and I really believe this. I think Lane Kiffin is so smart, and his analysts, and they're going, okay, remember what happened last time? We had a false sense of security. That ain't happening again, is it?
Well, you certainly hope not, but I mean, there really is. There's a confidence within this team. They really believe that they're going to win it this year. They really
Yeah.
do. I mean, to a man, every single person, and they're not scared of those expectations. They're not cocky, like you said. Carson Beck coming in there to the Manning Academy. By the way, that's fascinating information there, friends. It's kind of disappointing, to be honest, and
Yeah.
not something that you would feel like you would hear under the Georgia leadership there at head coach, because we know he is the opposite of that.
Yeah.
Really, really fascinating information right there. Makes you kind of doubt what's going to happen in a 17-game grueling schedule too, with that kind of attitude. But yeah, this team is, it's championship or bust. There's no just make the playoffs, get to Atlanta. There's none of that. It's bring home the hardware, or it is not a successful season, and they believe it to a man. And they got a quarterback they feel like is the best in the country. They got experience and depth at offensive line, D line again, experience and depth. They're confident, but they're not cocky. They're still
Yeah.
down to earth people. It's called the last ride. So
Yeah.
they're ready to rock and roll.
Hey,
Hey,
let me throw.
Yancey,
Yeah.
Yancey, let me ask you a question, because I know Rob knows the answer. How many road games against top 10 teams has Georgia won since 2018?
I don't know, because playing in the East, I doubt they've had to play that many, to be honest.
They've
I
won
mean,
one. They've won one road game against a top 10 opponent.
how
There
many
this
have they
year,
played? What's their record?
it's dismal. I mean, most
But
of
how many have they played number wise?
I think they're 1-6
One and
against
six.
top.
Isn't that fascinating? So in the
Yeah.
East, they've only played 7 road games in what, 6 years?
Against top
in
10
the
teams.
SEC. Yeah, against top 10 teams. If
Yeah.
you were in the West, you would have played probably 18, 20 games in the last
Yeah.
That's
Let, let,
exactly right.
I'm gonna present a fact to y'all that'll blow your mind. How many road wins against a true road opponent, not a neutral site, true road games? How many true road game wins versus top 10 opponents does LSU have in their history, which dates back to 1892?
in their history.
Yeah.
How many top 10 road wins does LSU have?
Yeah, against a true road opponent. I mean, like at Arkansas or at Alabama. I mean, I'm talking about outside of the SEC. Outside of the SEC.
Outside of the SEC. Outside of the SEC. Oh
Yeah.
gosh.
Sorry.
I don't
Yeah.
I don't know.
They have one. Yeah. And that was in 2019 in that shootout at DKR in Austin, Texas.
Now
They're hard to come by.
Let me ask you this too, though.
Yeah.
When you're saying now, is that when they faced them, were they a top 10 team, or was that
Yes.
what they finished at the end of the season? Because a
No.
lot of times those numbers get conscrewed, right?
No,
Misconstrued.
this was at the time of the game.
At the time of the game. They'll have one in their history. Now, I would have bet my life that wasn't true.
Yeah,
But,
and that happened in
That's
2019.
fascinating.
Yeah, it is. It's only my dad says a vast storehouse of knowledge in here, and you need to learn how to turn that into money. But it's true. it blows your mind and how hard
It's hard
it
to win
is.
on the road now. It's hard to win a top 10 team. And I tell you what, that Ole Miss Georgia game, it scares me too, because Georgia and Ole Miss could too. They could be fighting for their life in the playoffs as well. But I mean that schedule, Georgia, and I mean it is, Clemson on
Yeah.
at a neutral field and playing at Texas and at Bama, and they could be coming in Ole Miss with a loss or two, and even if you just got a loss, right, you don't feel just like you're a shoe in with two losses. You
Yeah.
feel like you're going to get in with 12 teams now, but they'll be taught that maybe a two-loss team doesn't make it. So I mean, they could be playing for their lives, and that's
Well,
a wounded dog is scary.
It is. Let me
Literally.
throw something at you. I was watching the Buddy Martin show last night with Franz and Shane Matthews and Chris Doring on there. And Shane says, look, with Florida's schedule, he goes, if they're 8-4 and it comes down to push or shove versus another team at 9-3, they look at strength of schedule. He said it's going to be a lot like the basketball, March Madness. Think about that. I'll tell you something else that's pretty fascinating is you look around the SEC. Yeah, you're right. 17-game schedule. But people start asking about Georgia. What do you ask Kirby Smart about this team? He's loaded. What do you get the person for their birthday or Christmas that has everything? You know what? Think about Georgia. Think about Georgia. Kirby said they spent a lot of time this offseason with the Nike Leadership Program. Reminds me of being a Sigma Nu pledge at Auburn, the visitation. You had to know everybody's name, first, middle, and last, their hometown, their major, and any, peculiar facts about them. And by the way, happy birthday to my wonderful pledge trainer, Philip Allen Thompson from Huntsville, Alabama, the watercress capital of the world, whose dog was named Mr. Happy. That was his visitation. But Kirby said Georgia players went through this program with Nike Leadership. You have to learn every teammate's first, middle, and last name. And he went on about that. And what Kirby was saying, and I love what he said. He is the son of a high school football coach, Sonny Smart, from Bainbridge, Georgia. And by God, they know how to play football in Southwest Georgia. It's the best in America, that and the Florida Panhandle down there. But Kirby said, you better know what that guy on your left or your right stands for, what he's all about, what his identity is, and what you are. He goes, because it's awful easy to get caught up in all the love and the praise and everybody telling you how great you are. So I will tell you, Kirby's smart, and okay, and okay.
You know where he got that from?
Basically, Kirby's finding excuses to win, and I think that's smart. They're just looking for ways to challenge themselves, because I know this sounds crazy, but you can eat too much at the buffet, at the all-you-can-eat buffet, And then you know what happens then? You're Ralph. Georgia, everybody is telling them how great they are, and he's got to find things to coach them on.
You know
it's
where
a great
Kirby
conversation.
you know where Kirby got that? You know where Nike got that? That is Urban Meyer at Florida, 2005 through 2010. That is pure Urban Meyer, and that's where Nike got that from. And it is very, very, very good. You're right. They're looking for excuses to win. But here's the thing. Everybody says they're loaded. They are. But how many loaded teams have we seen in the past? I'll ask both of you guys this question. How many loaded teams have we seen in the past that something happened along the way that they weren't nearly as good as they were supposed to be? Alabama a couple of years ago lost a couple ball games, and everybody was saying, "How could they do this?"
Yeah. Okay. Hey,
well,
let's,
go
ahead, Yancey.
It starts with the Georgia. Let's just put that on. They were the best team in the country by far last year. It was an absolutely sham that they weren't in the playoffs, and all the talk was about who didn't make the playoffs. Nobody even mentioned Georgia. They were the best team in the country, so they should come into this season with a chip on their shoulder.
Yeah.
Now, what you said about Carson is fascinating. I mean, that might be the most fascinating story that I've heard this whole off season. I didn't know he had that kind of attitude. Very un-Kirby like. Maybe he's gotten the clippings in his head. Maybe the agents have gotten in his head about how much he improved and how high he's going to go this year. I don't know. But here's the deal about Georgia. They're not big on the portal, right?
No.
And look, if everybody could recruit at that kind of level, Lane wouldn't have to be that big on the portal either. But what the portal does, not only do you bring in talent, but you bring in experienced talent. So what I'm wondering is how much of that talent at Georgia, of that depth, has been in the league 3 or 4 years and are 21, 22, 23-year-old guys. So are there a lot of younger guys? Do they have experience? I don't know their depth chart well enough to know that factor, but I'd be interested to learn that.
Yeah, it is. We got to wrap it up. Great show today. I think there's no question. There's a lot of questions that are going to be brought up, and we're going to do it on this show. Hey, be back tomorrow. Thanks so much, everybody, for watching. God bless America. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world. Act like it. Man up. We'll see you in the morning, man. Have a great day.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal and the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am R.A. Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.